Everyone, when they get up in the morning, they're existing in this world, this stage we live on. And they can let it come to them and float along, or they can engage. I've always been a person that kind of liked to be engaged. My name is Mike Prather. I live in Lone Pine here on the shores of Owens Lake. I'm a retired school teacher. I've been a consistent advocate for wild places and wild things. I birded out here and collected data on birds since the early 1980s, so we can do the math on that. I wasn't even gray at that time.
You must have had a lot of habitats.
I think I got 85.
These inland lakes, these places are critical because they're unique. Shorebirds need specific habitats, these muddy flats, tidal or inland areas where there's wetlands, and so many of these have been lost. California has lost 95% of all of its wetlands. The Owens River here was cut off to send to Los Angeles back in 1913. This lake disappeared in the 1920s.
Sources of ongoing dust problems in the eastern Sierra remain the subject of studies. Under state law, the Los Angeles DWP must study air quality and correct any dust problems that may be related to its water gathering. Right now, DWP and others are working on studies at the Owens Dry Lake bed where alkali dust remains a problem.
It was the largest dust source in the United States, and the dust was of very small size. They go to the deepest parts of your lungs, and they stay there. They do not come out. They're so small they can pass through cell membranes. They go right into your bloodstream. This was a hideous place. In this valley, people were breathing that dust for over 80 years. The Federal Clean Air Act and the California Clean Air Act says that no matter where you live, you have the right to breathe clean air. And so from 1978 to 1998, Los Angeles funded science and engineering studies. And it was only after those 20 years that they accepted responsibility for destroying this lake and creating the dust. It had nothing to do with birds. It was strictly an air pollution and air quality issue. And they said that they would fix it. So in 2001, water came on to several square miles of the lake and immediately began to control the dust in those areas, and immediately birds began to show up the next spring. In the old days, you would get less than 1,000 birds. Well, last year in April, we censused the whole lake. We had 97,000 birds. It was just kind of miraculous. It was a tremendous amount of water being used by Los Angeles out here. Half the aqueduct is flowing to Owens Lake for dust control. That's an enormous hit on their system. For Audubon, our greatest concern was protection of the habitat that had been created accidentally, in a way, by this dust project, by this water going out there to control dust. We were told that this is not a bird project, it is not a wildlife project, it is a dust control project. Well, by going in and saying, we're willing to talk about water savings if you're willing to talk about habitat, that allowed groups to listen to each other, to talk with, not at or to each other. That's when the conversation began to change, and it was no longer just a dust project, it was dust and wildlife. The city of Los Angeles will be fixing the dust at Owens Lake basically forever. They're now committed to protecting large tracts of habitat and, of course, trying to save and use less water, use it more efficiently. And that was all done by being present, by staying in the room, by showing up. I've been an active environmental or conservation person most of my life, since I was in my 20s. I'm always hopeful that something can be done. So I've worked on wilderness, I've worked on parks, I've worked on mining, grazing, water and land and wildlife. But in all of those, this is the one that I feel where a few of us really made a difference. But now we have this enormous wildlife addition, and that's really something.